Serious, what is the best unexplained mystery? The Bobby Dunbar case. In 1912 a 4-year-old disappeared while his family was camping. After a frantic 8-month search, a child matching his description was found one state over in the company of a traveling tinkerer. This little boy recognized Mr. and Mrs. Dunbar as his parents and seemed to know details of Bobby Dunbar's life. The tinkerer insisted that the child was actually Bruce Anderson, whose mother, a single, illiterate, poor servant, had given him custody because she couldn't afford to raise Bruce. Julia Anderson traveled to Louisiana to support his story and identified the little boy as Bruce. However, the courts believed the Dunbars instead and convicted the tinkerer of kidnapping. He later won an appeal, but the Dunbars retained custody of Bobby. 90 years later, Bobby's granddaughter was doing a genealogy project and discovered the old controversy. She had her father and her uncle, son of the younger subset brother, take a DNA test. The test proved that Bobby Dunbar was not related to the Dunbar family. He was Bruce Anderson all along. So, what happened to Bobby? The disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Long story short, he was driving down a road in Minnesota in 2008 and came off into a ditch. He phoned his father to ask him to pick him up and told him where he was, and his father said he would pick him up at a nearby town called Linden and that Brandon should walk there and meet him. As his parents were on the way to pick him up, they were on the phone to him. They were unable to see him initially, so they asked him to flash his car's lights. Nothing. He said he could see the lights of a nearby town and would walk towards them. His father dropped his mother back at home and went back out to find him. At around 2 a.m., after around 47 minutes on the phone, Brandon yelled "Oh shit" and the phone hung up. That was the last anyone ever heard from him. His car was found near Taunton, Minnesota, around 20 miles from where he said he was. His phone was never recovered. No trace of him has ever been found. No one knows what the lights he saw were, why he yelled "Oh shit," why he was 20 miles from where he said he was, where he went, or where he is. The disappearance of Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos. Two men, unrelated, who didn't know each other, disappeared from Naples, Florida 3 months apart under the exact same circumstances. Both men were last spotted being arrested by Deputy Steve Culkins for driving without a license. Neither men were taken to the jail. They just disappeared. His story is that he dropped both men off at Circle K convenience stores and drove away. There isn't as much evidence to go on with Santos' disappearance, but his story was actively disputed by the available evidence when it comes to Terrence's disappearance. For instance, he had Terrence's car towed and told the tow operator that the car was abandoned. But there were witnesses who saw him pull over Terrence and arrest him. What did he do with these men? My own theory is that he gave them a starlight ride. In other words, he drove them into the wilderness and dropped them off for them to walk home, and they died of exposure/dehydration. To me it makes the most sense with the evidence. But maybe he's a serial killer, who knows? The Stardust crash and the meaning of Standeck. A plane flying over the Andes delivered a final coded message, Standeck, minutes before disappearing. The plane was discovered by hikers 50 years later, but the meaning of Standeck still remains a mystery. A theory suggests that the pilot may have been suffering from hypoxia and misspelt descent, but the message was sent 3 times with the same spelling. The death of Gareth Williams really unnerves me for some reason. He was a mathematician who worked for MI6 and went missing in about 2010. When they investigated his apartment, they found a gym bag in the bath, padlocked shut, and his body was curled up inside. There was no evidence that anyone else had been inside the house, and on his computer history there was a bunch of fetish stuff about being locked in small spaces, but they got a bunch of people to try and lock themselves in a bag. Some people tried hundreds of times, and even if they could get the bag closed, none of them could lock it. Nobody knows whether his death was an accident or murder. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please press the like button. Also, if you are interested in more, please subscribe and turn on the bell to get notified when a new video is dropped.